If you feel trapped by life right now, which you do, every one of you in this room, if you feel trapped by life, unless you do something utterly radical, as you grow older, you're going to feel more trapped, more confined, therefore more frightened, more confined, and therefore more hostile at what has put you into this trap. Do you really think that all these things we talk about, including tonight, are mean? Well, I'm afraid you do. Because you take anything that's a threat to your sickness as being mean. Now, I'm going to give you some facts, very unemotionally, very calmly, very casually. The facts, the stories, illustrative stories, the truths, the illustrations, everything that you hear in this room wants to make you an authentically happy human being, happy man, happy woman. It knows something that you don't know. Look, isn't that astonishing? Here's something that knows more than you do, if your conceit can take it. God, truth, reality, knows everything that you don't know, and I'll tell you some of them. Truth knows that circumstances, whatever they may be, have no authority over your internal state. They have no authority, listen to this, they have no authority to make you happy or unhappy. But you don't know this. Truth knows it, but you don't know it yet because you live from exteriors. Not being complete, not being whole, not being healthy inside of yourself. You look out for that smiling face, that approving word, that raise in pay. And you not only expect, but you fiercely and in hostility demand, yes, demand, that those exterior circumstances try to make you feel better, try to make you happy. You don't know what happiness is, but you want happiness. But you are hearing here right now that when you are one pure circumstance within yourself, that wholeness, that health inside of you understands everything about the exterior world. It knows why people go to war. It knows why people want to make a lot of money. It knows why there's fights in the home. It knows why people feel lonely. Truth, it knows the answers that you don't and can't know because you're afraid to let go of your false knowing in favor of something that is not part of your present nature. Therefore, you won't let go of yourself in order to let truth tell you something higher because you can't take credit for it. There is a dark part of every human being that always wants to be the boss, that always wants credit, that always wants to refer everything back to itself and say, see, I did this or I did that. Truth is trying to get all of us to the point where we sit back very quietly and you watch all those people on the merry-go-round of life in front of you. One comes around dressed as a prosperous businessman. Another comes by as the bum down on Skid Row. Then the sophisticated lady comes by on the third horse. Then the politician comes by on the next one, and the religious teacher on the next one. And you're standing outside merry-go-round on solid ground, looking at the passing show in front of you. Can you imagine? Listen to what I'm going to say. You're watching all these thousands of varied people go by you, and they make no wrong impressions on you at all. I said no wrong impressions. And the reason there are no wrong impressions is because there's one empty seat on the merry-go-round. And every time it comes around, you see that empty seat and you say, I used to be there. That's where I used to ride. I used to be one right with it. And I'd sway with the music. It's pretty exciting music. You know what it's like on a merry-go-round. And that helped distract me. And I saw the other people, and we all looked at each other, and we said to each other, hey, we're really going somewhere, aren't we? The preacher said, yes, we're all going to the promised land. The businessman said, yes, we're going to fame and fortune. And the sophisticated lady said, yes, we're all going to the party and have a good time. Do you still believe them? Yes. You're still on the merry-go-round and don't know it. You've read all these books and you think you're so smart. I can look at your face and tell where you are. You still have to look around at those other people and want reassurance from them that you are going in the right place. You want them to lie to you, which they will do. You see, surrounding the merry-go-round, the mad merry-go-round, there is a very, very soft bit of grass surrounding it. So that if you decide that you're tired of being a liar, you're so quick to talk, to give an answer to the other person. You can hardly wait. They stop talking till you give your reply, because your mind's going, the merry-go-round's going. But if you decide to get off the merry-go-round, jump off, leave the rest of your so-called friends, you're afraid you're going to get killed. That's it, very bluntly, really. If you may, even if you're tempted, even if you go as far as to say, I'm going to jump off and see what it's like not to ride in this mad circle, it'll be a long, long time before you have the courage to jump off because you're afraid you're going to get killed. And the preacher will tell you you're going to get killed. You better stick with us. You're safe here in the traditional, in the known, in what's familiar to you. The businessman will lie to you. This is a dog-eat-dog world. Get out and make money. The sophisticated lady will tell you that pleasure and having fun is the purpose of life. What else is there? Show me something else. She doesn't know. So you're afraid to jump off. So I will help you. I will tell you that if you're ready to give up your conceit that you can already help yourself and can help other people and that you know these things, if you're ready to give up your conceit and you climb down off of that horse and you go to the edge of the moving platform and you leap off, I will tell you what will happen. So if you ever do it, this is right knowledge that will help you. You won't get killed. There's no way you can get killed. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. I better tell you. You're dead on the merry-go-round. You're already dead. You have physical movement. You can wave your arms, and the movement of the merry-go-round itself seems to give the illusion of life, just as it seems to give the illusion that you're going somewhere, that you're traveling somewhere purposeful. And if you ever notice that the same old scenery, time after time as you go by, you close your eyes to that. And you go into imagination that it's new scenery. The new wife will do it. She won't do it. Moving to another state will do it. It won't do it. You've already moved to 10 different states. So if you have the courage to let go of there's an arm up there somewhere that holds the horse. You let go of that and jump off. Whew. What a blow. What a jolt. You're going to roll around, not know which way is up or down. You're going to be confused. And as you roll over for the third or fourth time, just for one split second, your eyes go back to the people on the merry-go-round who have seen you jump off. And in that one split tenth of 1 second, as miserable it is, as uncomfortable as it is, as scary as it is, the looking back at the expression on their faces tells you 100% that you did the right thing. That sophisticated party lady with her champagne glass and her cigarettes. You look at her face. Remember she invited you to the party and she told you how nice it was going to be and you'll meet new friends. Everything will be nice. You see a look of violence and hatred on her face you wouldn't believe that she was capable of. She was capable of it. It was in there all the time. And you saw that preacher who talked about love and about heaven and quoted the Bible so much. The shock of seeing what he is like is incredible. That man is a devil. Now look, I'm talking to you seated here now. I'm not using the word devil as a figure of speech. I'm not using it as an illustration. I'm telling you that he is a devil. That is what the devil is. The devil is viciousness in human form. The devil is anything dark that despises rightness, that despises Jesus Christ, for example. The preacher despises Christ and all that he stood for, all that he taught, all the love that Christ taught. That preacher is a devil. Oh, you don't know it. Heaven help you, you don't know it. If any of you get in here, their clutches. There's no difference between any of them on the merry-go-round for that matter. They simply have different colored pitchforks. You look back and you see that businessman you were about to go into business with him to make a lot of money, and you see his hatred of you, and you finally knew what was going to happen if you'd gone into business with him. He was going to con you out of your money. One way or another, he was going to cheat you out of your money because he's a pretty smooth operator. He's done it before. So you're off the merry-go-round. And now you begin to understand what hell is. You're still rolling. You understand. You roll for a long while. You understand what hell is, and I'll make it very simple. Hell is not knowing who you are while you still want to be somebody. Clear? Not clear? Hell is wanting to be the companion on the merry-go-round. You are someone who says yes to the champagne lady, no to someone else, yes or no. But you're a fellow passenger on the merry-go-round. You're part of the crowd. You know who you are. Everything is fine. Everything is great. You're going somewhere. But you couldn't take it anymore. You couldn't take the false attempt to believe in yourself because you can't believe a lie anymore. It's become too painful. So when you get off, you understand thoroughly why you had to get off, which was that you can't go along with the roles anymore, even the role of a bitter person, a hateful person. You see the need to give that up because even that is false. It has no validity in itself. And you get off, and while you're rolling, the hell is increased to an intensity you wouldn't believe until you do it. Because you want to go back, but you can't. There's a large part, not all of you yet. There's a part of you that's right. That's why you leaped off. But the devils inside of you, as well as the devils on the platform, the revolving platform, are screaming, come back, play it safe. Something horrible is, you fell off. Look what happened to you. After a while, your memory of what you saw in one split second in your rollaway, the memory of those animals in human forms on the platform, your memory of that becomes stronger and stronger and stronger until you realize everyone on the merry-go-round are the same devilish nature. Ooh, this puts a lot of guilt and a lot of shock in you. They're your parents. Your parents are on that merry-go-round. Your friends are on that merry-go-round. The seeing of all this, of what human beings are really like, is what gives you the strength and what gives you the energy and what gives you the intelligence to not try to climb back on. But you just let yourself continue to roll by watching what happens to you. And what will happen is the following. Look, that thing's going pretty fast around, and you get off, and that centrifugal force, and your leap off, which is a conscious leap. It's a deliberate leap. You're doing this conscious. You didn't fall off. You understand? You didn't fall off. You chose to leap off. So there's a lot of force there, a lot of energy there that throws you off at a distance and off onto the grass. And you'll keep rolling for a long, long, long time, not knowing where you're going or what's happening to you. But because you have chosen, that has put the force of truth itself on your side. And so truth then, now, since it can have control of your life, it didn't have control of you on there, didn't have control of anyone on there. They're under the control of the forces of darkness in this world. But you have jumped off of there, which has now put you out in the open where God's power, force, energy, intelligence, light can now come down and begin to surge through you. And one of the actions of this power that comes down is to slow you down in your roll, in your flopping, in your awkward arms out, legs out, not knowing what's happening to you. It's beautiful to not know what's happening to you. So you begin to slow down, and as you do, you begin to not only see the merry-go-round back there more clearly for what it is, a horror place, which you thought was a nice, fun palace, but you begin to understand where you are now inwardly and therefore also outwardly, because your relations with people are going to start to change. In fact, they started to change the minute you fell off. When you jumped off, because you incurred the wrath of the liars, the hypocrites who wanted to stay on there. So where you are now becomes clear to you because the merry-go-round mind is beginning to fade out, and the cosmic intelligence, can we use that term, is beginning to come down and instruct you and tell you that wherever you go from now on, now that you're under the power of truth, wherever you go, whatever your circumstances, everything's fine. Everything is fine right now. You don't fully realize this yet because you're still going to have to slow down more, yield to the slowing down process. And when you finally come to a stop, symbolically speaking, when you come to a stop, this means that you have escaped yourself. Remember, there's a vacant seat on one of the horses. No one is riding one of the horses. You jumped off. You understand that you really actually are no longer there, but you're out here. And I better remind you that when you're on that horse, going around and round, if you have any thoughts about inner freedom, about truth, about reality, about God, about saving yourself, if you have any thoughts about them while you're still on the merry-go-round, they are pure imagination. There are religious services held on the merry-go-round. All kind of people come to them. And God is mentioned, and the Bible is quoted, and comforting, so-called comforting words are said, and hymns are sung. And people think that they have found God. They think that they're good people. Only as you have leaped off voluntarily and get off at a distance, and you've come to a halt out there, can you look back and see in all its clarity, I mean 100% clarity, that you were a madman, that you were an insane woman. Now, outside, standing way out at the edge of the grass and looking back, you know that you were insane, you were violent, you were a murderer in your heart, if not with your hands. You know that now that you're standing back from a distance and looking at it. You know that you were. And because you now know that you were a murderer, that you were an animal, that you're vicious, you don't care about anyone, you're a ghoul, because you understand that you were that, you no longer are. You've come to the point of clarity, of honesty, where you didn't want to lie to yourself anymore about the kind of a human being you were. You went through all this process, which I've condensed in just a few minutes, but you understand that it's a year in, year out inner adventure. You understand what you used to be, because in truth, not in imagination, you are no longer that. By daring to leap off, by daring to drop your false identity on the merry-go-round, by daring to see what was beyond your own lies and hypocrisies, which all of you in this room have, daring to see what was beyond that, you found something that few people on earth ever find. And I'm not talking about church religion. I'm not talking about church organization. I'm not talking about psychology. I'm not talking about mental health clinics. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about you, and I'm talking about me being a decent human being. As long as you choose to remain on the merry-go-round, you're not decent at all. You'll give everyone you meet what you are, which is indecency, which is fear, which is lies. I invite you, I urge you, which is what this class is all about, to even try to get to the point of considering leaping off. You don't know, you couldn't. It'll be years before you leap off. You see, we don't lie to you and tell you that you'll do it tomorrow. Everyone else will lie to you. They'll lie, and you're so stupid you'll pay them money for lying to you. I urge you to try to get to the preliminary point where you can begin to consider what your life is actually like, no longer lying about it, and then consider everything that I've told you here tonight, so that you begin to maybe, how nice if you were to even get a little bit restless on the seat of that metal horse, a little bit restless, a little bit honest, when you're seated on it and you say to yourself, I'm going somewhere, but if I'm going somewhere, how come I always come back to where I started? How come I meet that man and I say, I'm going somewhere with that man, a nice relationship with him, maybe marriage, we watch TV together, we have a good time together. I say I'm going into a nice relationship with that man, and it's inevitable. Sooner or later, we're going to fight. We're going to quarrel. I'm going to secretly resent him coming over. I don't want him to come over, but I got him into my life now. How am I going to get rid of him? How come I repeat this behavior month after month, year after year? You get a little restless sitting on the back of that metal horse, and you begin to question the necessity for repeating your past behavior. I am here tonight to tell you that you don't have to repeat it, that you don't have to deceive yourself about it anymore. You don't have to endure the boredom. You're all bored. You're so bored with yourself. You're bored with life, bored with everything. You don't have to endure boredom anymore, because boredom is simply indicates that you're tied to time yet and expecting something in time to refresh you. But everything you've ever met in time has bored you, so you'll have to inevitably be bored again. We're teaching you here that when you get off the merry-go-round, you're no longer living in time, which the intellect creates falsely. But you can sit back or stand up outside the merry-go-round. Go where you want. Do what you want. You'll never hurt anyone. You won't hurt yourself. You've stopped hurting. Look. You've stopped hurting yourself. You've stopped being pulled between these two opposing desires and wishes and compulsions. You're not dragging yourself apart anymore. For the first time, because you're a friend to yourself, you can be friendly with anyone else and be in command. Good morning, friend. Goodbye, friend. Both are equally easy. So we'll take a break in a minute. Get a little restless on the seat, if that's all you can do for now. Let go of the reins a little bit. You're not going anywhere, admit it. Get a little restless. The next step would be you'll be able to not grip so hard on the horse, the pole that's in front of the horse. You won't grip it quite so hard. You'll loosen a little bit, then maybe you can climb down. Then you can climb off the side, still holding onto the pommel saddle. And you can look out there next and be afraid for a couple more years of what's going to happen to you if you jump off. Then your hand will loosen a little bit. You'll walk, and you'll let loose of the horse altogether. And at this point, incidentally, your friends will start screaming at you. Animals always scream when they feel deserted. And then someday maybe you'll jump off. Once you leap, listen, and I'll stop with you. So beautiful, I want to stop with this. Once you voluntarily leap off the revolving platform, you're in the hands of God, and He will do the rest. We'll take a break. Do you know, look, it's very simple. Do you know that truth, the God reality, can use the mind properly? There are proper parts of the mind, and the most elementary for living in this world is to learn how to build a house or do your bookkeeping or prepare your dinner. We know that. But the mind gets corrupt when it starts to call itself something, anything. Call yourself a victim or call yourself a hero. It's the calling, the naming that does the damage all the time. Go ahead, Jim, I'm sorry.
And that's where we get mixed up like the wheat with the chaff, and then we want to identify with the doing, and that's where we make our mistake.
Identify with the doing, yes. Saying that I did this or I did that, I achieved this. You and I have never done a thing in our lives. You've never done anything good. You've never done anything bad. You know why? Let's see if you can take this. Because you don't exist as a doer. Something happened, certainly, on the physical plane. There was action. You got married or you got unmarried. You founded the business or you flopped at the business. You didn't do anything. You thought you did, and you were very vicious in that business, weren't you? And you were very vicious in that marriage, weren't you? Of course. And so was she, and so was he, because he or she was just as lost as you and I were. There is action, but all true action belongs to God, to reality, cosmic action. I am not doing anything. I am a part of the whole action, not a man standing apart and directing this action or that action. See how conceit and vanity must vanish if we're going to grow, if we're going to find ourselves. Conceit says, I did this or I did that. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, you mentioned that, in other words, truth reality has nothing to do with the merry-go-round.
Correct.
So the mind has a hard time fathoming something that is separate from reality, which is functional.
It can't fathom it. It can't understand it. What it can do, which makes 4 billion human beings on earth sick, is imagine that it understands God. God is not a word. God's not a Bible verse. God is not a church. God's not a hymn. God is not a thought. You can't think about God. If you think about God, then you're going to think about it according to your conditioning. What is he, a Baptist God, Catholic God, a Zen Buddhist God, a Zuni God, or whatever? So if you think about God, you must always pull it out of the past, what you were taught as a child or by various experiences. But thinking about God is not God. It's the absence of thought that makes God very real to you. The absence of thought, which means the absence of you. There can't be God and you, or you and God. There can only be an absence of what used to be called you, and then in that absence understands, because there's something else there, fills the absent space, you might say. Now, don't you go into imagination into any of the things that you're hearing here tonight. Rather, be aware that you're going into imagination if you are. For example, if you say I can jump off the merry-go-round, you're making a mistake. See, there's a lot of the traps along the way. What happens is that you give up thinking that there was anyone on the merry-go-round to begin with. You see, you understand? You weren't really on the merry-go-round because you didn't exist and never have and never will. As you, as Dorothy or as Vernon or as Bill. The absence, the seeing that you were an artificial self built out of imagination, built out of experience, built out of desires, the seeing of that is the leaping off of the merry-go-round. You've understood that you didn't exist at all in the sense that you thought you did, and caused all that misery to yourself by living from imagination. Phyllis. I don't like setting aside compartment times to do your inner work. You get up in the morning and you work for an hour, meditate or whatever you do. That's very dangerous because it'll put you into mechanical preparation, mechanical little... Then when it's all over, you're so glad you can go back to your usual way of thinking. You're supposed to work 24 hours a day. Yes, don't set it aside like that. It'll give you a sense, oh, I've done my duty, now I can relax, work all day long. Did any of you ever be in a certain religious order where, religious practice, I should say, where you had to read a chapter of the Bible every day, or read some spiritual literature every day, or say a prayer every day? Didn't you hate it? Weren't you glad when it was over? This, by the way, introduces us to the thought of self-torment, which a few of us were discussing a couple days ago. Can self-torment ever be right? Can forcing yourself to do religious duties ever be right? Can that come from God? God is not the author of confusion, but of a clear mind and a relaxed mind. Yes.
At times, it seems that members of the class, including myself, misunderstand self-discipline.
Okay.
And convert it to self-torment, where they make themselves miserable.
Oh, yes. Well, the solution to that is simply to know your state every second, whatever it is. And any state that is strained can never be right. So you drop that. That means that it's being charged by thought and feeling. And it can very easily masquerade as inner work when you're simply distracting yourself from right inner work, which is to drop thought and simply know that you're here and now without reference to the past or the future. Do it now. Let's all just be here right now. That is eternity. You see, the dark forces in this world have succeeded in catching all of us up to this point. We've decided to leap off. No more. No more. I don't care where I go. I don't know where I'm going when I leap off. I do know that life has become intolerable pretending that all is well. Pretending that the next girlfriend or the next boyfriend or the next raise is going to make me happy. I can no longer go along with my own dishonesties. I can't and I won't. If you want to go, you just go. Goodbye. You're not going to get me to go back, not for that you could offer me the universe to come back. I'm not going back. There's no way I'm going back. I don't want it. You have caught a glimpse of something that is not a part of the merry-go-round. Just a glimpse. I'm still turning and tossing. Heavens, I don't know which way is up or down. But already, the second I leaped off, I sensed something different about the atmosphere there. For example, the attraction of the music, the razzmatazz, and the champagne lady, and the businessman, and the preacher. The attraction they used to have for me is already I'm just a few feet off on the air, away from the platform, the moving platform. But already I sense something different. I can't identify it. I don't know how to talk about it. But I do know for absolutely sure that there's a difference between the atmosphere on that revolving platform with its blaring music and its phony people. There's a difference in that and where I am now. Ooh, I tell you, there is such a thing as spiritual curiosity. You listen to that, right curiosity. You know, what's this all about? You see, it was sort of a negative curiosity, you can say, that got you to investigating in the first place. How come the only answer I know is a snare? How come the only answer I know is to cry? See, you're curious. Might there be another answer? I'm telling you there is, but you have to find it for yourself, and it does exist, whether you know it or not. And everything in you doesn't want to believe that it exists because it wants you to remain where you are. We're here, every one of you, we're here to fight for you. And I could go around the room and put my hand at each one of you here to tell you that we are here to fight for each one of you. But if you don't show up here, if you don't come here, we can't. It's simple as that. There it is. You must come here and put yourself under the right influence, the right power of this room. And you can hear just as you're hearing tonight. You can begin to understand a little bit, just a little bit every night. And you will begin to change, and you'll see the difference between what you're getting here in this room and what you've been given from that lunatic society on the merry-go-round. Get tired of the merry-go-round. What's it got you so far, huh? Nothing but regrets, nothing but pains. We have about 6 minutes left. See, all right, that's good. There is none good but God. There's no decency, there's no morality, there's no consideration, there's no common courtesy even, except as you live from the truth itself. You see, the invented self is rudeness itself, while of course pretending to be polite and pretending to be courteous and all. But it is so desperate, so frantic to prove its existence. It can't be polite only when it wants something. Then when it gets it, it boots you. It ever happened to you personally? Huh? It's happened to every one of us, and it'll continue to until we straighten ourselves out. The question will answer itself as you get off the merry-go-round and begin to live a true life from what your real nature is. You can't think about it and get an answer from your ordinary thought, because it will then go into contrived moralities. Should I give money to them, or should I not give money to them? And I will tell all of you, you'll have to go through great guilts. You'll have to go through mountains of guilts in order to pass beyond the phony morality, which you hate. You despise your morality. I can't tell you how you despise it, because it's a trap. Eventually, you'll go beyond all guilt, because you'll eventually see that you never do anything good or bad from yourself. And when you see that, you rise above the opposites, and then there is only a good expression, but it is not of you. You have gone. Right? When you're on the merry-go-round, we're talking about attachment, psychological, spiritual, non-spiritual attachment to material things. As long as we're in the physical body, we must have material things, because we live in a material body, and it must have correspondence to that. We're talking about trying to get a sense of identity out of material things. So when you jump off the merry-go-round, you don't give up material things. You still have to have a home over your head, don't you? Of course you do. You still have to have clothes. So you don't abandon material things, obviously, but you abandon your attachment to them, which means you just wear clothes and live in a house and eat food, because this is the way it is as long as we're on this physical and social level. But you don't want a better suit than your neighbor. You don't want a bigger house with a bigger view window than your neighbor. And you're not jealous of your neighbor if he does have a bigger one. There's no wrong use of material things. Good night.
This Vernon Howard tape will be continued now on side 2.
Dropping thought is the same thing as interrupting thought.
You interrupt it, and when you interrupt it long enough, you'll see the shock of it, feel the shock of it. And not wanting that shock anymore leads to the dropping of it. And you don't drop it. It drops itself, because there's no you to hang on to it. I, Vernon, Margaret, Joe, want thought to continue because I am invested in it. When I see that I and my thought are one, and that's the cause of all my problems on earth, the dropping of myself and the dropping of the thought are the same thing, and I set myself free by that. But the interruption has to go on for a long time, because I have to deliberately, voluntarily induce the shock of seeing where I am at the moment and in the wrong place. You see, we don't understand, follow this just a little bit more. We don't know that we're in the wrong place internally. Not knowing we're in the wrong geographic location inwardly, we don't know that we're in the wrong place outwardly. Maybe that marriage is all wrong for you. Maybe that lifestyle in general that you're living is all wrong. Maybe those habits that cause you to do this and that, maybe they're all wrong for you. But you don't know it yet because you haven't investigated the whole business of your life. I've given you exercises by which you can suddenly be aware of where you are at any given moment, and then see you don't want to be there at all. What am I doing here? I really don't want to be here at all. I'm trying to find something, and I know deep down inside that I'm not going to find it here. What am I doing in this involved in this human relationship. What am I doing on this vacation? I go on a 3-week vacation to get rest, and I come back exhausted. I'd been better just staying home and working around the house or doing whatever I want instead of going on the vacation. But the word vacation had hypnotized me. Vacation, have a good time, and the posters blat out how nice it's going to be, and you fall under its spell and you spend all that money. And worse, you know the worst part of it? You know this, don't you? We all know it. You have to convince yourself that you're having a good time. Your wife, you get at the hotel room, and you're tired, and your wife says, oh, they have the marvelous little shrimp dinner down 10 miles down the street. Let's hire a horse carriage. You know those quaint little horse carriages they have for vacationers? And your mind is going $80, $90. You don't want to be there. And one reason you may be with that spouse or that friend is because you don't have the courage enough to see the uncomfortable position you're in. You know that if you complain, say, I don't want to be here, you're going to induce great guilt when that other person, oh, don't you love me anymore? Every lost human being, which is all of you in this room, will not hesitate to use any ruse, any device to hold people in order to make your life feel right. And you'll fall for it as long as you're on the level of that other person. I'll stop there and you can ask again if you want. The absence of thought is understanding, with a capital U. You understand that ideas can't understand. The government of this country and of every other country has millions of ideas on how the country should be run, right? Millions of laws, regulations, proclamations, millions of them. All these are thoughts, ideas about how you should behave. And of course, we, the government, always knows better for you than you know. And if you don't think so, we'll put you in jail or fine you if you don't recognize our superior wisdom to yours. And yet governments fight among themselves. They hurt people. Churches do the same thing. Any social organization is made up of mere ideas, of thoughts. And nobody thinking those thoughts knows what they're doing, but they're getting their salaries. So they have to bluff it through. They're getting their positions. They're getting their feeling of selfhood out of it. Thought can't understand thought. Two natives in the jungle don't understand each other because they're both on the level of the jungle. All they can do is clobber each other. And therefore, if there's no intellectual movement, then there is no so-called me interfering with life. You know why we get battered by life? Because we interfere with it. You have never had, I have never had a pain, a suffering, a shock, a discomfort, an anger, unless we first interfered with the flow of life. Why do I interfere with the flow of life at all? Simply because there's an interferer there who is very, very scared, who's very insecure. And this is why you have all your family fights, because you see your spouse or some other relative behaving in a way that displeases you, that doesn't confirm your idea of what makes you secure. And so, feeling threatened by his or her wrong behavior, you judging it wrong behavior, of course, feeling insecure, the insecure part of you, the insecure thoughts and ideas and aggressions, then attack verbally or perhaps even physically the other person, threatens them and says, now you think as I think. You treat me the way I want to treat myself. That is, you obey me, you do what I want you to do so that I'm not quite so scared. You threaten me when you rebel. And if you rebel too far, you're going to make me so insecure and so scared, I'm going to have to hit you physically maybe. This happens all the time, right? Holmes, oh, you see it in the newspaper. What if a person living in this state of fighting for his so-called rights, of demanding things, what if he understood everything we've talked about, even in these 5 minutes? What if he understood this and began to drop the thought, began to drop his I thoughts? Then, when someone leaves him, or someone comes to him, or he gets more money, or he loses his money, no matter what happens, is there an interferer? There's no one, there's nothing there to interfere. Therefore there can't be any fear at all of anything that happens. You tell me where the entity is who's going to be scared at not getting his demand, at not getting his desire. Do you know how advanced this is? Don't you dare think that you understand what I'm talking about, because you don't. You have the words and you've recorded them well in your mind many times. How many have been scared today? How many have been hostile? How many have been insecure? See? It doesn't make a difference if you stumble. You see, your big fear is you go up and talk to someone and you're afraid they're going to go dry, and that's going to so scare you that you're going to go dry. You just do it and go dry. And yet, look, you can consciously force yourself to say something. Who cares what you talk about? How's the weather? Nobody cares, not really. But I'm talking about a conscious exercise in you going up and breaking out of your little neurotic shell. How many of you live in a neurotic shell? Everybody. You come down the bank of the river and you want to cross. You have a place to go to on the other side of the river. The river is wide, it's swift. You don't know how you're going to get across. No boat. You can't see any bridges. You can't see any wide spots where the river is a little less deep. You're frustrated. You want to get across the river and get to your destination, but how are you going to do it? So someone comes along and you get talking with him. You say, how can I get across the river? He says, well, that's very easy. Cost you $5 to find out. But you want to get across the river, pay me $5 and I'll tell you. You give him $5 and he says, well, you go down to the right, you go down about 5 miles and there's a bridge down there. 5 miles across the river. Everything's fine. Thank you very much, sir. You're so nice to have helped me. What are you smiling about? Are you ahead of me already? Huh? Are you saying no bridge? Huh? Well, guess what? He goes way down there, no bridge. Someone else comes along, says, $10. See, the price has gone up. For $10, I can tell you where there's a boat moored on the river. Go several miles on down the same direction. There'll be a boat there. Row yourself across. He goes down, no boat. Taken again. Now he's lost all his money. And he kind of senses he's been taken away from his original spot, of course, where he started from. Meets a third man. Third man says, oh, you go on down there, lots of rocks, place just right to get across the river and you can be on your way. He goes down, no rocks. It cost him all this money. Now he's going to get a little bitter, isn't he? What a horrible world this is. All these deceivers, all these charlatans, all they want is my money. Well, that's a fact. Of course, on that level, these people have lied to him. Here I want so badly to get to my destination across the river, and these people lie to me. Well, I'll go back to where I started and start all over again. So he goes back to his original point where he first came down to the riverbank. Still frustrated. How is he going to get across? No way to get across. So another man comes along, he says, look, it's a terrible world you live in, a dreadful world. It's filled with phony religions, phony philosophers, phony advisors, phony governments. I will help you. All these people you met before sent you in the wrong direction. You go upstream, not downstream, and you go up a while, or a few miles, and you'll find a bridge that'll take you across. The man, a little suspicious now, he says, how much? Nothing, no charge, no charge. So he goes upstream a little bit, and no bridge. Now he's even more baffled than before, because the man gave him this advice, but he didn't want anything. What did he get out of it? So he met another man, same thing. Same thing happened that way, same thing happened down that way. Finally began to understand a few things. All he's still bitter and hard. We found out that the people who had sent him upstream were getting simply a different kind of reward. They're getting their reward, all right, but it was a different thing. Their reward was having images of being a helpful, kind person. I'm not here in it for the money like most people are, like those charlatans you met. We're here to help you. Want nothing from you. But he saw what they really wanted was simply images of being a kindly and helpful person. So he comes back to the original point again. In the state, ladies and gentlemen, in this room, that you are all in. Yeah, I'm telling you. The state that the man is now in is the state that you are all in. Let's see if we can number off a few. Frustrated, confused, bitter, angry, frozen with fear for one thing, self-centered, egotistical, pretending that you have the answers. This is his state. He's still not over. And he's tried all these things, and now he's even bitter against what he calls God. Look, if there's a God, he must have deserted me. And this is a real big problem for him now because he had religious upbringing. He went to Sunday school, and he went to church, and he was part of the young people's group. I did everything I could to cross this river, and I was deceived by other people, and God didn't protect me from them. Now he's ashamed of himself, and he has to suppress that. He has all this guilt, and he's wondering if now God is going to send him to hell for being bitter against God. God going to send him to hell? He's in it right now. His present state is hell. He somehow senses that if he can somehow get across the river, then he can understand everything on this side, because on the other side we can look back and see it a little clearer. But he doesn't know who to ask. He wants help desperately. So a man comes along, another man comes along, and he says, sir, I have noticed you the last several days trying to get across this river, and I can help you. The man says, thank you. I hope you're not a charlatan like the rest. I hope and pray you're not. Tell me how to get over. For example, is the bridge really 10 miles down that way, or maybe 15 miles up that way? Where's the boat? I must have missed it some way. They wanted my money, and they kept the bridge and the boat from me. Tell me where the bridge and the boat is, and I'll be so grateful to you. The man said, there's no bridge or boat. He says, I have to get across. Maybe you didn't understand me. There has to be a bridge or a boat for me to get across. Just tell me where they are, and I'll get across, and I'll be so grateful to you. And this man, who, by the way, had met many people like him down at the bank of the river before, understood what was going on inside the man. So he said, now listen very carefully, sir. If you want to get across the river, I can tell you how to do it. And I will tell you quite frankly that every day I meet people just like you. See, I live up on a hill overlooking the river. I see everything that happens. I understand everything that happens. And it was time to come down and give you the advice on how to get across. Now, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. In fact, you're not going to understand it. You still insist that if you go up left far enough, you'll find a bridge or a boat. If you go downstream far enough, you'll find a bridge or a boat and you'll get across. Now, the first very difficult thing I want you to do is to understand that you're not going to cross on a bridge or a boat. It is not that easy. And you, sir, like all the other people who come down here, I'm not insulting you now, I'm just telling you a fact. You're very lazy. You want your salvation to get to the other side. You want it made for you. You want the bridge already built, so all you have to do is get up and walk across. You don't have to do any thinking. You don't have to encounter any dangers or anything. Just find the bridge and walk across. I want to tell you now, for the last time, that I'm going to tell you something else, and this is going to even be worse, but I have to tell you that there's no way to cross the river on a bridge. There is none at all. Now, if you'll understand that clearly, you'll be able to accept far more readily what I'm going to tell you next. Because most human beings don't want to hear what I'm going to tell you next. They reject it. And they're searching for bridges. And if you look carefully at a distance on either side, you'll see them. And you'll see them bitter, and you'll see them cursing. You're saying, where's the bridge that should be built for me? Someone should have provided the bridge for me. Where is it? And they're hateful, and they fight with each other about it. Now you listen carefully. The way across the river and to your final destination is not there, but just like that. You go straight ahead, right down into the water, and you go straight ahead till you get to the other side. Already the man is gone. He said, well, one, I don't know how to swim. Two, I don't know what whirlpools there might be out there. I don't know how far it is. I don't know whether I have the strength to get across or not. What you're telling me is very, very unacceptable to me. Man said, now listen carefully. I'll say it again. And if you want to get mad at me, go ahead and get mad. I won't get mad at you in return. There's no need for that. You see, I've been on the other side, and I've come back to tell you about this. I've been over there, so it's very plain to me. You step into the water. You take your first few steps, get the feel of it first, and you understand that the water is going to be quite different from the ground you're walking on, and your feet are not going to be quite on such solid ground. It's going to be kind of scary to you at the start because your feet are going to sink into the sand. You go out a little bit, you get down to your knees, and you get up to your shoulders. Pretty soon, you're going to have to take your feet off the solid ground, sandy ground underneath altogether, and start swimming. I don't know how to. I didn't ask you if you knew how to swim. That's a wrong question. Of course you don't know how to swim. If you know how to swim, you'd be over there. You don't know how, and I'm trying to tell you that. The man says, well, how do I learn to swim? Well, you learn to swim by trying to learn to swim. Don't complicate it. Just do it. I don't want to do it. I'm afraid to do it. Sir, the river is raging. It'll carry me downstream. I'm afraid it'll carry me away. So the man who's talking with him is very patient with him. He says, I will tell you that you are carried away in a way right now that you don't know internally. But if you will dare to get out there and struggle against the deep water, keep going in spite of everything, do it the direct thing, do the hard thing, go against every inclination inside of you, you'll be one of the very, very few men and women who come down to this bank who ever get to the other side. I've told you before, and you've seen them. Most of them don't make it because they want the easy way, and they don't want to follow the actual, real instructions for getting to the other side. Will you do it, sir? So the man said, the traveler said, well, I'll try. Will you help me? Yes, I'm here to help you. There's no way I can leave you. I'm here until you make it to the other side, or until you make your decision to go upstream or downstream, insisting that a bridge is there, in spite of me telling you that there's no man-made bridge for you at all. You have to cross for yourself by your own initiative, your own effort. And it doesn't make any difference at all whether you're terrified or what else you're going to be. What else? Look, I didn't tell you to be brave. Don't be brave. Be terrified. But get your feet wet. So the man got in the water, and he got down to his ankles, and he turned around and he looked longingly back already to the man. Are you coming with me? He says, yes, in a way which you don't understand. I'm with you all the time. In a way in which you don't understand. I'm with you because you are trying to cross in the right way. Men faintly understood the meaning of that, just faintly. So he went out and he got into his knees, out to his knees, he got out to his waist, and he got up to his shoulders. What do I do next? And he turned around and looked again, terrified, wanted to come back again. The man said, stay where you are, and he shouted at him, don't you dare come back. When that man out in the river heard the man on the bank screaming at him, he knew that was love. He knew that was accuracy. He knew that was truth talking to him. And his next stage was a very interesting one. He'd used his arms before for working in the garden, for carrying out his business, for doing everything he'd do with the arms in everyday living, but he never used them for swimming before. But it seemed very, very natural and very, very easy at a certain point where his feet began to leave the sand under the water. It felt very natural for him to put out one hand like that, awkwardly, of course, and the other hand like that, awkwardly, of course, and the next hand like that. Well, what do you know? I'm swimming. What do you know? I can tell that I'm 3 feet farther across the river than I was a second ago. It felt very natural and very easy, and he was doing it from himself. And he found another thing interesting. He found that he quit looking back toward the shore less and less and less. He knew the man was there, giving him instructions all day. He knew he was there, but he didn't look back quite so much. And began to see how he could rely on one thing. Simply on himself, on his own strength, his own effort, his own initiative. Pretty good. All right. Oh. And then he came into the middle of the stream where the water was roaring and it threatened to carry him off. And he looked back once more. And the most astonishing thing of the whole trip, the whole adventure happened when he looked back at the shore while he's being carried away. And he looked on the expression of the face of his advisor. The face of his advisor was 100% calm and confident. He could hardly believe this new experience, because the confidence and the strength, the expression on that man's face was his. He could compare, he could begin to understand, way back when he was a boy, when he was in his 20s, he could begin to understand whenever he looked at someone else for support, for guidance, for strength, they were just as scared as he was. They were looking at him for support. This is the way it's always been. So he knew he'd run into a very miraculous experience while he was being carried away, and looked back at that man's face which had no terror at all. That man was not afraid of anything. He knew that that man was his friend. Therefore, he knew that the confidence on that man's face indicated that the man who was swimming was all right too. He was not in danger. So what he saw on the man's face became his own confidence. Not that he was taking it from the other man, but he was understanding it, which is quite a different thing. He was understanding it from the other man. And the very understanding of that took away, listen carefully, took away the wastage of the energy that was being wasted in being afraid, of being terrified, of thinking he's going to be swept away. The second the energy ceased to be wasted in terror, the turn of the energy went into his own forward motion, so that he became stronger than the current itself. So he put his hands out again, he swept out again, and he finally reached the other shore. And when he did, he said to himself, you know, he's talking to himself, you know, if I hadn't paid attention to that man, if I had gone upstream trying to find the bridge, gone downstream trying to find a boat, if I had done that, if I had listened to my own laziness and dependency instead of that man who really helped me, I would not only have, I would have failed to arrive over here, but I would never know what I have missed, what I had missed. Those people, I can see them now. I get pretty good eyesight. I can see them scrambling up and down the riverside on the far side, screaming and cursing, "Where's the bridge?" They really don't want to cross. They want someone else to do all the work for them. They don't want to put out any effort. They don't. Now, ladies and gentlemen seated here, and you had better make a little effort yourself in trying to understand what I'm trying to tell you tonight. I'm trying to tell you there is no man-made bridge. There's no way you can even use thoughts of other people, thoughts of books, thoughts from tapes. There's no way you use thoughts to get across. But you insist on that. You insist on trying to cross to the other land to be happy, for example, because you don't know any other way to do it, and you're still listening to your own neurosis instead of to truth itself. Well, if you want to scramble up and down the bank endlessly the way you're doing now, you're all doing this in your own little ways, then you just continue, and your one hope will be to fall on your face on the sand on the bank, so that you're not going to waste energy anymore in listening to the liars outside you or inside you. So that you're going to begin to listen to something that is higher than your own intellect, to something that won't deceive you, that won't take your money and then abandon you, but something to the contrary, something, you see, you want to be loved, huh? You want to be loved? You don't know what it means, because you have no love in you. But you see, truth does love. Truth, follow this please. Truth loves itself. That is, it doesn't say I love itself. Truth being one thing, a wholeness, a oneness, truth loves itself. I'm using words, the words, dualistic words, to describe a single condition. So if truth loves itself, which it does, when it sees someone prostrate on the sand, no longer wishing to battle truth, tired of the battle, truth can look down, the man living on the hill can look down and recognize the tiny spark of itself the tiny, tiny spark of itself that says, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know if I can make it at all. I don't even know where I'm going. But I do know that I'll begin to listen to something other than my own past, my own conditioning, my own fears. So the question to all of you tonight is, were you quite unknowing to you understand that rushing upstream and downstream is always unconscious? Ye know not what you do unto yourselves. You don't know that you're insisting on getting across the river in your own way, according to someone else's bridge or boat. Now, I will tell you, do you want me to save you several years of agony? I will tell you that you're wasting your time completely listening to your equally sick friends, listening to your old nature. You're just wasting your time. You're going to continue to be nervous, just as nervous as you now are. Anything can make you nervous, you know, the slightest thing. It is a good thing, please try to understand, not a bad thing for you to fall on your face on the sand and say, I give up. I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, the statement, I give up, and meaning it because you're exhausted and have no strength and no fight, no neurotic fight anymore. The statement, I give up, is a prayer. And that's heard. And if you really, honestly, not in imagination now, which you'll do for the next few years, until you begin to see that that is imagination running up and down this. That's one way of imagination works, going up and down, pretending that you're sincere. When you're down on your face, really give up. When you stand up again, you will meet the truth standing there, giving you precise, exact instructions on how to swim across. Beautiful. What kind of a God do you have? I'll tell you what kind of a God you can have. A truth, a God, a reality who knows you don't know how to swim, who knows you're terrified at putting your foot ankle deep into the river for the first time, who knows you want to stay with your sick friends demanding an organization, some sick psychopathic organization demanding a bridge. You build a bridge for us. God knows that you would rather do that because you've done that all your life. God knows you don't even know what's on the other side. He knows that. You don't. None of you know what's on the other side of the river. You don't have to know. You will know when you get there. And if you go into imagination, then you're still running up and down the river. Trust in truth develops inside you as you learn to rightly distrust your wrongly operating mind. As you learn to distrust the ideas that angrily and fearfully insist that someone else should build a bridge for you or leave a boat moored for you over there. As long as you have not examined your daily thoughts, your minute-by-minute thoughts, you will have unconscious faith in them, and that unconscious faith in your illusory, neurotic thoughts will compel you to run one day downstream, the next day upstream, the next day downstream, the next day upstream. And another lie that goes along with that is the lie, the hope lie, that if you just go far enough this time, surely it will be there. I will tell you, you can go 100 miles downstream, you can go 500 miles downstream, you can go 1,000 miles upstream, 10,000 miles upstream, and you'll never find the bridge, but you will get more terrified. You come back to where you started. That is, you abandon all your trust in your own intellect as it is presently operating. You dare to disbelieve in the lies that you've presently accepted as truth. And the truth will appear to you, and you will know it is there, because the truth, speaking on a higher level, will begin to contact the beginning of the higher level in you. And this higher level in you can instantly understand the voice of something that is not part of your ordinary thinking patterns, your ordinary mind. The first time you hear this is comparable to putting your feet ankle deep in the water. Then as you continue to listen, beautiful encouragement. You see, truth alone can encourage because it's telling you the truth of how to actually accomplish it, how to get to the other side. Lies are always discouraging, are they not? You continue to listen and the instructions become clearer to you. I'm talking about something very real, not very practical, not just religious talk now. Something, what I'm telling you is something you can experience personally for yourself. And then you hear the instructions to go out to waist deep and to shoulder deep. Now put out your hands and start swimming. Keep going right in the middle of the swirling river that threatens to take you, and never mind the threats there. Truth is stronger than any threat in this world. What is threatening you? The future is threatening you. God is stronger than the future because God lives in eternity. If you will just swim, continue to swim in spite of all obstacles, inner and outer, all your sick friends calling you back, for example. If you'll continue to swim, the voice and the instructions will become increasingly clear, and you'll eventually arrive on the other side. This is the promise of truth. You want a promise that will be kept if you will keep to truth itself, if you will do your part, and your part is to give yourself up so that something higher than you can hear the instructions.
One of your statements, you said, an effort to do right is wrong?
Yes. Any effort to do right will be based on an idea of what is right, and all ideas of what are right are based on your concept, based on your phony systems of morality, of decency, and it won't have any validity at all. You'll only be trying to promote and protect yourself, calling it right, and you hurt yourself and you hurt everyone you meet. Ideas have no morality. Phyllis?
Right action comes from a natural state where there's no effort.
Yes, correct. Pure action is the only morality there is. Pure action where there's no self-centeredness, no self-seeking, etc. You can see how you're depending on ideas, in this case on the movie, to give you a sense of direction for the next 2 hours. The trouble with that is, what are you going to do the next 2 hours after that? And after that, your mind is constantly going to have to be plotting and planning, keeping something ahead of it every second. And if you don't have any entertainment to do, maybe you can find someone to quarrel with. That would give you something to do. And you can get all your hatred out and destroy everybody you meet, as you presently do, by the way. You're terrible people. See, I know what you think. I know the way your minds and feelings operate. I know what your nature is. I know that you'd blast people if you could. Give you 1 ounce of authority where you have the sick authority of society behind you, and you would blast the world. The policemen on tonight's news, according to the news, were intimidating the citizens and breaking the law themselves because they didn't get the raise, or some policemen were laid off and they objected to it. Just watch what happens to your highly moral people when they're thwarted, and especially when they gang together as thugs. All moral people are thugs, and they collect in that cathedral and in that church with the stained glass windows in front of them. They are thugs. You don't have to have your own strength, you understand? You don't have to have your own strength because you don't have any strength. All you have is a weakness which is brought on by unconscious living. You have only weakness, which is the same thing as unconsciousness. Being awake is the same thing as being strong. What you have to do, as the story illustrated earlier, is exhaust yourself. And this is a long, long, hard process because we're so very, very deeply asleep. We don't want to wake up. We want to dream that we're awake. We want to lie to ourselves, in short. And this is why we have all this false strength that gets us into trouble. That's no strength at all. That strength collapses when your marriage collapses, doesn't it? It collapses when you lose your friends. It collapses when you're denied the smallest thing you want in the world. And your so-called strength collapses and goes into anger over being rebuked, perhaps. That's strength. Real strength means that there's no you meeting any kind of event at all, either a favorable, what you call a favorable, or an unfavorable event. There's no you meeting it at all. You are not there to meet. The event will happen, certainly will happen, but you are not meeting it. Therefore, you can either be elated or depressed by it. And everything dark in any human being does not want to understand what I just said, because that's a threat to its false existence.